Good evening and welcome to Mitv Primetime News, coming to you live from a broadcast studio here in Lagos. I am Kemi Omoshebi Awudehin. First, to begin with our top stories. FEC approves 121 million naira for Federal Polytechnic Bauchi. Senate passes 2021-2024 MTEF FSP for 2022 fiscal year. Another foreign scene, President Biden plays down chances of UK-US free trade deal. And finally, in the world of sport, House of Rep to summon sport minister over Nigeria's team doping crisis at Tokyo Olympics. Now the news in details. As part of efforts geared towards improving the quality of education in the country, the Federal Executive Council approved the sum of 121 million naira for the provision of furniture and equipment at the Federal Polytechnic in Bauchi. Minister of State for Education, Chukwuemeka Wajoba, made this known today while briefing the State House correspondents after the weekly Federal Executive Council meeting presided over by Professor Yemi Osinbajo at the Aso Villa, Abuja. The minister said the contract, which was in favor of MESSRS Turaki Heritage Nigeria Limited, is to use the idea retool and refurbish some of the dilapidated equipment and furniture at some of the departments at the Polytechnic. Also, the Minister of Information and Culture, Lam Mohammed, who spoke on behalf of the Honorable Minister for Water Resources, said the Council approved a memo for the Ministry to revise estimate cost and extension of the contract of the consultants supervising the project from an initial sum of 98 million naira to 203 million naira.
Evaluated, and the memo we presented for the provision of furniture and equipment at the Federal Polytechnic in Bauchi, and approved same. The idea being to use the opportunity to retool and refurnish some of the dilapidated equipment and furniture at some of the departments at the Federal Polytechnic in Bauchi for this at the sum of 121 million naira, and in favor of Mrs. Turaki Heritage Nigeria Limited at the Federal Polytechnic Bauchi.
The Bagwai Water Dam Irrigation Project in Bagwai local government area of Kano State actually was commenced. The initial contract was actually awarded in year 2005, and due to several logistics problems, the project is still on, and it is recently the FEC actually approved an augmentation of the entire contract, and that means also that the mandate of the consultant supervising the construction will also have to be reviewed. So it was reviewed from 98 million.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has admonished State Attorney General and Commissioners for Justice to ensure speedy prosecution move. The Vice President said it is important that the State Attorneys General devote more time to improve the pace of cases in courts. Professor Osinbajo stated this when he received in audience 6 Attorney General and Commissioners of Justice from the Southwest Geopolitical Zone paid him a courtesy visit at the Presidential Villa, Abuja. The Attorney Generals had briefed the Vice President on the progress of justice reforms in their various states. They said many of the reforms were inspired by the successes recorded during his Professor Oshimadu's stint as Lagos State Attorney General. The Vice President, who expressed delight at the visit, commended them for what he described as a great work that has been done in the states, observing the wide range of areas being covered by the justice sector reforms. The Senate has set up a conference committee to harmonize positions of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. President of the Senate, Senator Hamela Wanu, who announced this on Wednesday during plenary, said that the conference committee will work with that of the House of Representatives in order to be on the same page on electronic transmission of results by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. According to Lawan, Senate leader Senator Yahya Abdullahi will be the leader of the team. Other members are Senator Kabiru Gaya, APC, Kano South to represent Northwest, Danjuma Goje, APC, Gombe Central for Northeast, Uche Ekwenife, PDP, Anambra Central for Southeast, Sani Mohammed Musa, APC, Niger East for North Central, Ajibola Bashir, APC, Osun Central for Southwest, and Matthew Orogide, PDP, Edo South.
Senator Mohammed Njuma Goje, Northeast, Senator Uche Lilian Ekwenefe, Southeast, Senator Mohammed Sani Musa, North Central, and Senator Matthew Orogide, South-South. The team is to be led by the Senate leader.
Meanwhile, the Senate has passed the 2022 to 2024 Medium-Term Expenditure Framework (MTEF) and Fiscal Strategy Paper (FSP) of the federal government. The upper chamber also okayed 13.98 trillion naira as the total aggregate expenditure of the federal government for the 2022 fiscal year. These approvals followed the consideration of the report of the Senate Joint Committee on Finance, National Planning and Economic Affairs, Foreign and Local Debts, Banking, Insurance and other financial institutions, petroleum resources upstream, downstream, petroleum sector and gas on the 2022 to 2024 MTEF FSP by the Senate. Chairman of the Joint Committee, Senator Solomon Adeola, while presenting the report, said that 13.98 trillion naira federal government's aggregate expenditure for 2022 is made up of total recurrent non-debt of 6.21 trillion naira, personnel cost of 3.48 trillion naira, capital expenditure of 3.26 trillion naira, special intervention amounting to 350 billion naira, and special intervention of 10 billion naira.
Number one, on the issue of the exchange rates, the 410 rates that was proposed by the central bank, that is what the government of the day will use to execute the budget that is to be brought before, that they will be bringing before the National Assembly. And that is termed to be the official rate the government will be used to exchange whatever transaction is going into as far as the budget is concerned. And the recent move by the Central Bank of Nigeria to block the BDC transaction and return all the monies to the banks is one area in which the central bank is trying to ensure that the rate between the parallel market and the government rates have some correlation, because the way it is now, we cannot see, because what the dollars is currently going for and what the government is proposing to be used as its own benchmark for this budget, is the variation is so wide. And I mean,
if economy is growing, you need to reduce the deficit. But during times of economic crisis, you can't tighten your belt, because once you tighten your belt, you run the tendency of stagnation and very, very high inflation. And this in the times when we have terrible security challenges in this country.
Because there are a lot of leakages in government, leakages that nobody can explain. And therefore, Tying that to the recommendation 16, that we must strengthen the Fiscal Responsibility Act, the Commission, the Accountant General's Office, the Auditor General's Office, then we have every reason to say we have money in this country. Borrowing is not bad, in my humble view. Borrowing cannot be seen to be bad, no. So long as you are borrowing for a purpose, and you also have a plan to pay back that particular loan.
Do we continue to borrow, or do we look elsewhere for us to get this money? Mr. President, there are areas that we will get. We had the issue of stamp duties, which were addressed in these chambers sometime last year. Now, it has been moved, called now electronic transfer. Mr. President, we put in 2020 about 500 billion. In this budget, what has come is 29.9 billion. We need an explanation to that, Mr. President. How can you move from 500 billion of stamp duty? We used to call it stamp duties. Federal Inland Revenue themselves in 2020 say that they had a business transaction of about 52 trillion. If we now multiply that by the stamp duties they collect, Mr. President, there is no way they will present only 29.9 billion.
When you don't make hay while the sun shines, this is the kind of thing you face. When we had plenty of money, we didn't prioritize the construction of infrastructure in Nigeria. We wasted our resources when we had much. Today, we realize we need to construct infrastructure because that's the only way to develop the country.
In a related development, the House of Representatives on Wednesday received the report of its Committee on Finance on the Medium-Term Expenditure Framework and Fiscal Strategy Paper, MTEF, for 2022 to 2024. The MTEF FSP is the template on which the annual budget preparation is based. The MTEF document submitted to the National Assembly in July was referred to the House Committee on Finance to interrogate and make recommendation to the House before the 2022 budget is presented by the President. The committee chairman, James Faleke, submitted the report to the House at Wednesday plenary. It was earlier scheduled for presentation and consideration on Tuesday, but was stepped down. Still in the Green Chamber, the House of Representatives on Wednesday indicated its willingness to investigate the probable exclusion of Rivers State from the list of states to benefit from the federal government's borrowings. The lower chamber is to probe the possible omission of the oil-rich state as a beneficiary of state-backed 4 projects. Following a motion of urgent public importance by Representative Solomon Bob, alleging that Rivers is the only state out of the 36 states to be left out. The lawmaker further alleged discrimination against Rivers State, which contributes enormously to the Federation account. The House has mandated its Committee on Aids and Loans to liaise with the Presidency to include Rivers State in the loans if it is found to be the only state that has been excluded. The rep's move is coming 2 days after Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike described as an act of discrimination the alleged refusal of the federal government to include Rivers as one of the states that would benefit from projects for which it was seeking fresh foreign loans to execute. As the number of Boko Haram terrorists surrendering from their hideouts and enclaves in Sambisa Forest, Lake Chad Springs, and other bushes approaches 10,000 in the last few weeks, the theater commander, Operation Adinkai, Major General Christopher Musa, has said that nobody will compromise in ensuring that everybody answers according to his own dates. He made this known just as he advised those still yet to make up their minds to note that they should not allow anybody to deceive them into taking arms against the nation, as according to him, they will never win. He said staying in the bush and killing people will not provide the kind of life they wish for their children and family. Speaking against the backdrop of fears being expressed that some of the surrendering terrorists may be mixed up with and kept with IDPs to shoot them, the theater commander dispelled any such occurrence. In view of the peculiarity of traffic situation in Lagos State, the Federal Road Safety Corps, FRSC, has introduced an initiative called Motorbike Ambulance for ease in getting to the scene of road accident. The initiative is expected to play a crucial role during traffic gridlock often associated with Lagos roads as traffic officials battle on a daily basis to bring the situation under control. Making this disclosure in an interview in Lagos, the sector commander of FRSC, Olusegun Ogungbemije, said motorbike ambulance will avoid gridlock as the Corps will determine to invigorate the operation.
Lagos State is quite peculiar. Anytime there's a crash, you see huge gridlock that at times it becomes very difficult for rescue team to get to the point of to get to the scene, and invariably finding it difficult to attend to the victims. So we just introduced motorbike ambulance. You are the first media house that will be unveiling this too. Motorbike ambulance is taking the initiative from the regular business, the circular business, that you see all these bikes conveying items under quick stands from one destination to the other, beating the series of gridlocks they meet along the line, that if they happen to be vehicles, it will have been very difficult for them to get it delivered on time.
In its bid to offer complimentary services for all programs of the state government, the Association of Retired Heads of Service and Permanent Secretaries on Wednesday conveyed its commitment on corporate social responsibility in cash and kinds at less privileged homes, government schools, as well as primary health facilities in Lagos State. The association's plan was reviewed by its president, Femi Oluwile, in Lagos at a press conference towards the celebration of its 2021 anniversary themed Celebrating the Past with Focus on the Future. According to Oluwile, the rare gesture is in preparation to celebrate its members and acknowledge those who have passed on during and after service to good people of Lagos State. He further added that the program will uplift the government efforts, brighten the lives of less privileged citizens, and put smile on the faces of the deprived.
As a body of people who have occupied visible positions in society, Other House has also aimed from the outset that its members should individually and collectively provide a model of good citizenship that may be copied and replicated or quoted by the rest of society. We believe that the fact of having done this should provide a major boost to the government's efforts to increase public acceptance and participation in the scheme, which is supposed to be compulsory for all Lagosians by law, and which will finally make it possible for our people to get the desired health care from their preferred service providers without a need for out-of-pocket payments.
Let's take a moment. When we come back, we bring you stories from outside Nigeria. Stay with us. Welcome back. When we down to the foreign scene, President Joe Biden of the United States has played down the chances of brokering a post-Brexit deal, free trade deal with the UK as he held talks with Boris Johnson at the White House. Downing Street said its priority was still getting a deal with the US alone, but there were indications that UK ministers are now considering joining an existing North American trade part instead of pursuing a separate deal. The two leaders also discussed Northern Ireland, climate change, and Afghanistan during the 90-minute meeting. demonstrates that they had agreed to continue working towards a future full free trade agreement. However, Mr. Johnson had earlier also downplayed chances of securing a deal with the U.S. before the next general election, saying the Americans do negotiate very hard.
Things. One, that latter case is being worked on. I was under the impression, but I don't know this, I want to be clear, I was under the impression there had been a civil settlement reached, but I don't know that.
That's correct.
And based on what I've been told, it was not an intentional act. It was someone who was new to driving on the wrong side of the road, quote unquote. And but I'll follow up on that. I expressed my sympathy when it occurred, but I don't know the status of that case right now.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has said that China would no longer fund construction of new coal-fired power projects overseas, surprising the World on Climate for the second straight year at the United Nations General Assembly. China supported coal projects in developing countries including Indonesia and Bangladesh and has been under heavy diplomatic pressure to put an end to the financing to help the world meet the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement to reduce carbon emissions. Xi's announcement in a pre-recorded video address at the annual UN gathering followed similar moves by South Korea and Japan earlier this year. He said China would step up support for other developing countries in developing green and low-carbon energy and will not build new coal-fired power projects abroad. Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte struck a typically combative tone as he addressed the United Nations, insisting that Philippines will hold wrongdoers in his deadly so-called drug war accountable after the UN-backed International Criminal Court (ICC) began an investigation into the killings. Duterte's video address to the UN General Assembly, the last of his presidency, comes just days after the ICC formally authorized an investigation into alleged crimes against humanity of murder linked to his war on drugs. Duterte defended its policy in a speech, saying those found to have acted beyond bounds of the Philippine law will be held accountable, while indirectly rejecting the ICC investigation. He added that he had already ordered a review of the conduct of the campaign and the files of the suspected drug dealers were being looked at by the Department of Justice. Duterte also said that his government was working with the UN Human Rights Council to look into the cases.
The United Nations have proven to be inadequate. The UN is a product of an era long past. It no longer reflects the political and economic realities of the world. Democracy and transparency are concepts that reverberate in the halls of the UN. But ironically, the Security Council, the pinnacle of UN structure, violates every tenet of these values. It is neither democratic nor transparent in its presentation and processes. Many member states have spoken firmly, and we agree this simply is not right.
A 5.9 magnitude earthquake was rattled southeast Australia, damaging buildings in the city of Melbourne. The earthquake happened about 9:15 local time, which is 23:15 GMT on Wednesday at Mansfield, not far from the Victorian state capital. The earthquake was also felt in neighboring South Australia and New South Wales. It was followed by two aftershocks of 4.0 and 3.1 magnitude. While this is one of Australia's largest earthquakes in recent years, it has not caused significant damage.
Good evening here from Washington. On the way in from the airport, we learned of the earthquake which has occurred in Mansfield in Victoria. Geosciences provide us with the advice of a record of 6 with aftershocks at 5.5, 4 and 4. been in contact with Premier Andrews as well as the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister Mackenzie, and we'll continue to receive reports throughout the night. Of course, that first response has obviously been provided by the Victorian Government, but of course the Federal Government stands by through Emergency Management Australia to provide whatever assistance is needed, whether from the ADF or others, but at this stage we have had no reports of serious injuries or worse.
You're still watching the Mitv Primetime News. Let's take a minute. When we come back, we bring you stories in the world of sports. Stay with us. Welcome back. When we now to the world of sports, the House of Representatives on Wednesday opened a probe into the disqualification of Nigerian athletes at the 2020 Olympics over alleged doping. During the plenary, the lower chamber resolved to summon the Minister of Youth and Sport Development, Sunday Diary, to explain the preparedness of the Nigerian contingent for the sports festival. The resolutions follow the unanimous adoption of a motion at the plenary titled "Need to Investigate Activities of the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sport Development on the failed doping test by Nigerian athletes at the Olympic Games in Tokyo." While moving the motion, the lawmaker representing Ijesha South Federal Constituency on Osun, Babatunde Ayeni, said the Nigerian delegation to the Olympic Games fared well in terms of performance, thereby raising the country's rating, the Committee of Nations. Consequently, the lawmakers resolved to invite the Minister of Youth and Sport Development to brief the Committee on Sport on the level of Nigeria's compliance with extant regulations set by the International Association of Athletics Federation, IAAF, and the Independent Anti-Doping Arm Athletics Integrity Unit. In boxing, Anthony Joshua could face his toughest ever fight when the defends the WBA, IBF and WBO heavyweight titles against Alexander Usyk in London on Saturday. The British boxer promoter Eddie Hearn has said that the 31-year-old Joshua has height and reach advantages and will almost certainly be heavier at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, but Hearn said he was nervous ahead of the bout. Despite the stiff test offered to Usyk, Hearn has been impressed by Joshua's confidence and demeanor in the build-up of the fight, expected to draw a crowd of more than 60,000. And just before we end the Mitv Primetime News tonight, let's take a quick recap of our top stories. SEC approves 121 million naira for Federal Polytechnic in Bauchi. Senate passes 2022-2024 MTEF FSP for 2022 fiscal year. And on the foreign scene, President Joe Biden plays down chances of UK-US free trade deal. And finally, in the world of sports, House of Reps to summon Sport Minister over Nigerian's team doping crisis at Tokyo Olympics. And that's it on the Mitv Primetime News tonight from the News Production team. I am Kemi Omoshebi Awudayi. Many thanks for watching. To have a great night, and please, just stay safe.